Kit, it's a simple question, declared a scarred woman. What does it mean to be a hero? Sorry, Instructor Sybil, Kit replied, looking down at his desk. That's a question I'm still trying to figure out. With a blackboard behind her, Instructor Sybil leaned back and raised a hand to her temple. Suddenly, the classroom erupted into laughter as the students began to ridicule Kit. "What are you, stupid?" called out one student. "Man, he really is an idiot," cried out another. With his head still down, Kit watched out of the corner of his eye as a young woman with dark skin and short black hair fixed her gaze upon him and asked, "Then why are you here?" with a tone of utter disgust. "Everybody shut your mouths," Instructor Sybil shouted at the top of her lungs. Unlike the rest of you, at least he had the honesty to give a genuine answer. The once rowdy students quieted down in an instant, afraid to so much as breathe without further angering their teacher. This, however, did little to improve Kit's mood. In fact, he felt even more embarrassed than before. He felt small. "Kit, look at me." Sybil's voice wasn't warm or kind. It was simply matter-of-fact. Gently, Kit raised his head to look at Sybil as he still slouched in his seat. The young 15-year-old boy couldn't see anything but the battle-scarred teacher. "Being a hero is dangerous. The likelihood of death is exceedingly high," explained Instructor Sybil while pointing at her missing eye. "So is the chance of suffering a fate that's even worse." "I understand that," replied Kit, "probably more than I should." The young boy looked back down at his desk and opened his hands. They were riddled with severe burn scarring, which hadn't properly healed, making them seem misshapen and deformed. With a slight sigh, Sybil's stern expression softened as she cocked her head to the side. There was something about Kit's words which struck a chord. The instructor didn't have much time to think on this, however, as the bell marking the end of the day rang out. One by one, each of the students left, chatting amongst themselves before the commute home. Each of them, except one. "I respect your honesty, but that uncertainty, that weakness," Sybil said to Kit as he readied to leave the empty classroom. "It's going to get you killed." Almost out the door, Kit turned back and waited for the instructor to finish. "That question I asked, you've got until Monday to find an answer," explained Sybil. "If you can't, then you'll no longer have a place at this academy, so don't bother coming back." The teacher's words stuck with Kit as he did his best to avoid the other students and their hushed whispers. All he wanted to do was grab his jacket, grab his bag, and leave. Though he was met with a few glares and many amused expressions from other classmates, Kit did precisely that, as he stepped out onto the decaying streets of Fordale, the city without heroes. Putting his hood up to protect himself from the falling rain, Kit looked back at his school, the Fordale Neophyte Academy, and shook his head. He found it ironic that the one building dedicated to training the next generation of heroes was still maintained and standing, while the city surrounding it was literally falling apart and being consumed by vegetation. Reaching into his pocket, Kit pulled out a phone and placed it next to his ear. "This is Brett," said a voice over the speaker. "I can't come to the phone right now, so please leave a message after the beep." Kit raised his head to the stormy sky with his eyes closed. "Would you look at that?" the boy said to himself. Another rainy day. Still on the phone, Kit began his solitary walk home. "Hey Dad, just checking in," Kit stated. Though the beautiful Gothic architecture of Fordale was prominently on display, much of it had fallen into ruin as the population fled in the wake of rising crime and economic collapse. Those who called this city their home were either truly desperate and couldn't afford to leave, or truly depraved and took advantage of the awful situation. "Finished my first day at the academy and it went..." Kit paused as he watched a group of hoodlums throw rocks at an abandoned building, breaking its windows. "Well, it went," he finished while continuing his walk. The further Kit got from downtown Fordale, the more ruined the city began to look. Whole blocks were either bombed out piles of debris or abandoned and consumed by vegetation. Though there were reconstruction attempts, remnants of which could be seen on propaganda posters encouraging civil service, nothing had ever been accomplished. Funds sent to the city by the League of Nations just had a tendency to go missing. As he walked, Kit felt a sudden crunch beneath his feet and stopped. Looking down, the young boy spotted an old magazine and picked it up. The publication was a rather old issue of Hero Watch. Its headline, "Fordale's Dynamic Duo." Its cover had two heroes, one man regaled in black that wore an eyeless mask named Orion, and a woman adorned with vibrant colors that had a pair of legs made of water named Silky. At the bottom was a subheader which stated, "The city without heroes, unlikely guardians." Got asked a question I didn't know the answer to, Kit said to the phone. I ended up making a fool out of myself. Down a nearby alley, Kit could see two individuals trying to break into a nearby car. Oh well, Kit continued as the distant criminals made off with their ill-gotten gains. These things happen. Putting one foot in front of the other, Kit let go of the magazine and let it fall onto the rain-soaked streets. Don't sweat the petty things, right? Kit asked while continuing his walk. Getting out of the rain, Kit steps into a hospital room and spots a familiar sight. A legless woman staring out a window watching the approaching storm. She pays no mind to the young boy's arrival. Mom isn't doing any worse, but... Kit explains. Setting his bag down by the table next to the woman, Kit pulls out a few books and begins working on homework. She hasn't gotten any better. Time passes as late afternoon fades into mid-evening. Kit continues working on his homework while the woman remains motionless in a wheelchair, watching the rain fall. Standing up, the young boy goes over to her and gets on his knees. He places both of her hands onto his, trying to elicit some sort of response, but gets nothing. She just continues to stare out the window, watching the rain fall. At this point, I'd settle for her just noticing me, Kit says with a lump in his throat. Letting go of his mother's hands, the young boy looks down and grips his knees tightly. Or anyone, for that matter. On the streets of Fordale once again, surrounded by oak trees that sway in the wind as rain steadily falls, Kit puts his phone away and looks down. Hey Dad, I gotta ask, Kit says while staring at a gravestone. It reads, Brett Meyer, November 29th, 2017 to December 19th, 2047, with the words, "See you later," etched in at the bottom. Why did you do it? Why did you choose being a hero over... Kit stopped himself and fell silent for a long time. Sorry. That was selfish. The silhouettes of Fordale skyscrapers loom in the distance as the sun slowly sets. I miss you, the young boy declared. I miss both of you so much. Turning back, Kit says, See you later, old man. We'll talk again soon, before walking out of the cemetery. Now, a few blocks away from his previous destination, the young boy begins to hear something rather peculiar. Near an abandoned apartment building, and past its adjacent alleyway, Kit could perceive sounds he could only describe as fighting. Suddenly, as the boy approached the alleyway, a giant plume of fire erupted behind the apartment building. Kit could feel its overwhelming heat while moving towards its source. He was afraid. However, curiosity outweighed the young boy's sense of reason. Now hiding behind a pile of debris, Kit watched as two figures, clad in a strange armor, fought in a clearing surrounded by ruined buildings and giant, monstrous bones. One combatant was wearing a silver armor, seemingly made out of metallic bone, and was shooting a continuous stream of fire at his opponent. The other combatant, however, was on the defensive, protecting his torso with two oddly shaped daggers, and was wearing a similar armor. However, it was gray and had a full-face helmet which looked like a raven. Marshals? What are they doing here? Kit asked himself. For a moment, the Silver Marshal's fire relented, allowing the Raven Marshal to charge his opponent and take the offensive. And why are they fighting? Kit asked himself in utter bewilderment as the two marshals charged one another. Once again, the Silver Marshal launched a fire attack from one of his hands. However, the Raven Marshal leaped into the air, dodging. Immediately following this, the Raven Marshal threw one of his daggers at his opponent and hit its mark, resulting in the weapon becoming embedded in the Silver Marshal's sternum. As the Silver Marshal stumbled, trying to recover from his newfound wound, Kit noticed he was holding something in one of his hands. Something he was trying to protect. The Raven Marshal wasted no time and closed the distance on his opponent. With little struggle, he thrusts his dagger into the Silver Marshal's stomach and lifts him into the air. Then, with one great throw, the Raven Marshal chucks his enemy across the clearing and into the alleyway. With little time to react, Kit watched as the Silver Marshal came crashing down beside him. The young boy collapsed, trying to conceal himself behind debris. However, the wounded Marshal didn't move a muscle and merely bled. What do I do? Kit asked himself in a panic. In the distance, the young boy could hear the approaching sounds of footsteps. What do I do? Kit asked himself again. Then, with the slightest of gestures, the Silver Marshal tilts his head towards Kit and reaches out in a moment that stretched on endlessly in the young boy's mind. Kit came to a decision. and reached out with all the strength he could muster, throwing the Marshal over his shoulders. As fast as he could, the young boy sprinted down the alleyway, carrying the wounded man over his shoulders. However, as he ran, something strange occurred. The item the Marshal was protecting started to light up, distracting the already panicked young boy. Then, in a quick flash of light, a holographic woman projected herself out of the item and faced Kit. "Boy, you're being pursued," declared the holographic woman. Trying to make sense of what was happening, Kit looked down at the one addressing him. "You can't run or hide. You'll have to fight," stated the woman. "With what?" Kit exclaimed. "The mantle and project..." Before the woman could finish, she stretched out her hand pointing behind Kit and shouted, "Look out!" as the Raven Marshal appeared behind the young boy with a fist at the ready. With no time to react, Kit braced himself for the impact, only for the Silver Marshal to raise one of his arms into the air, taking the brunt of the Raven Marshal's attack. This, however, wouldn't be enough, as the pair went flying toward a nearby wall. The Silver Marshal's back made contact first, creating a massive hole in the process, which Kit flew through, before landing relatively unharmed in the decaying shell of an abandoned apartment building. Frantically, the young boy looked for the Silver Marshal's body as blood poured from a wound on his head, only to spot the item which the holographic woman was still projecting herself out of. "Put on the binder and don the mantle with intent to transform," instructed the woman. "It's the only way you're getting out of this alive," she finished. Kit looks back, seeing the motionless body of the Silver Marshal, and quickly contemplates what he should do. Then, out of the corner of his eye, the young boy spots the approaching silhouette of the Raven Marshal. With no more time left to think, Kit sprints toward the binder, picks it up, and fastens the odd device to his right arm. Then, as if by instinct, the young boy raises his left hand and hits a button on the item, activating it. In a brilliant display of light, Kit transforms into a black armor, similar to the other two Marshals, and readies himself for combat, his helmet styled after a hound, staring down the approaching opponent. Letting his training take over, Kit darts towards the Raven Marshal and throws a quick jab that doesn't connect. To the young boy's surprise, his enemy evaporated into a mist of shadow, only to emerge from the ground beneath his feet, uppercutting him. This knocks the wind out of Kit, as his back makes contact with the ground. This moment of vulnerability doesn't last long, however, as the young boy recovers by rolling onto his front and going in for a leg sweep. Much to the Raven Marshal's surprise, Kit's attack connects and drops him with tremendous force, the impact of his landing kicking up a cloud of dormant dust. Following this, the young boy uses the momentum of his attack to pick himself up, only to watch as his opponent's body fades into the shadowed floor. Looking around frantically, Kit thinks to himself, "Crap, where did he go?" Only to hear a response from the holographic woman inside his mind. "Never mind that," the woman states. "We need to find a way out of here." "Did you just read my mind?" Kit thinks to himself. "In battle, our thoughts become as one," the woman explained. "That, however, doesn't matter. You have to escape." Unbeknownst to Kit, the Raven Marshal lurked in the shadows, readying to strike. "The Marshal is dead and you're outmatched. Staying here is just going to get you killed," the woman declared in a frantic tone. "The mantle, the armor you're wearing, should have made you fast enough to get away." With tremendous force, the Raven Marshal emerged from the shadows and struck Kit, only for his attack to have little effect due to the boy's block. As the impact of the punch sent Kit's feet skidding across the floor, the Raven Marshal faded back into the shadows. "How do you know the Marshal is dead?" Kit asked inside his mind while cautiously approaching the Silver Marshal's body. "Check your helmet's visor," the woman explained. "There isn't a pulse." Doing as he was instructed, Kit looked at the corner of his helmet's visor and saw that the Silver Marshal had flatlined. "So there isn't," Kit thought to himself. "I can create 2 holographic copies of you," the woman stated as Kit rolled the Marshal's body over. "When the assailant shows himself again, I can send one to distract him, another toward the hole, while you jump out the nearby window." Bending down, Kit touched the empty holes in the Silver Marshal's stomach and sternum. "Where did the daggers get?" Before Kit could finish, the Raven Marshal appeared behind the young boy and plunged a blade into his back. Though the blade cracked through the armor and pierced the young boy's skin, becoming embedded, this did little to deter Kit as he spun around to face the Raven Marshal while pulling the dagger out of his back. With one forceful strike and blood pouring out of his fresh wound, the young boy impaled the Raven Marshal's hand with his own weapon and kicked him back. "Whatever your plan was," Kit directed at the woman, Do it! From Kit's position, the boy and two identical holographic figures made a break for it, each toward their respective target. One holograph sprinted at the Raven Marshal, another toward the hole in the apartment building's wall, while the young boy himself used what strength he could muster to break through a nearby window. The Raven Marshal engaged the first holograph, only to have his own trick from earlier play out before him, as his daggers cut through nothing but air. He then gives chase to the figure running toward the hole, only to stop and watch as it fades away. Realizing he'd been tricked, the Raven Marshal sprinted toward the window, only to be greeted by the sight of an abandoned Fordale street. Kit had escaped, however the cost of doing so was high. In the deserted remains of a convenience store, the young boy, no longer transformed, struggles to pull out his phone while attempting to put pressure on his bleeding wound. He dials a single number and wearily says, "Jagan, I need your help," before slipping into unconsciousness. "Kit? Kit, are you there?" asks the frantic voice of an old man. The young boy doesn't say a word, as blood continues to pour from his wound. Don't worry, I'll find you. Just hang on."